All right, presented by Litify. I'm Bill Biggs, and this is Transforming the Culture of Law.
Wow, super excited to have the Godfather of Law himself. He's going to make us an offer we can't refuse. Mr. Ed Herman, the managing partner at Brown Crouppen. So excited to have you on, Ed. I've known you from afar for years because I've been so impressed with what you guys have built there in St. Louis. You've got 10 locations. You're dominating the Midwest. And your brand, your personal brand is very interesting to me, is very powerful, and how that's influenced the firm. But I think most importantly, and the reason that I really wanted to have you on the show is because I think people love you. I know people that work for you, that work with you within the industry. You're seen as a guy who naturally understands culture and leadership, and that's what we're all about here, to give people some power-packed advice, opportunity to learn and hear from men like you, women out there, leaders who have done it right and who know what it takes to build a great firm. So welcome to the show, Ed Herman. How in the world do we know each other?
Well, I mean, I've met you over the years at various functions, and you were nice enough at your prior place. You did some great work down in Texas. You opened up your operation and let our people come down and spend a day really learning from you guys. And that's so much of what we have done in advancing our firm is, we never have the assumption that we have anything fully figured out. Every area of the firm is an evolution. Doesn't mean that we're not doing things great. I think we are. But the day you start thinking that you have it all figured out, I think that's probably the day you begin to die. So we do a lot of that. We will visit firms that are gracious enough, generous enough to share some of the things they've discovered. And then, of course, it catches up your knowledge sort of exponentially. It's not just your own experience anymore.
I love that. It's so true. In fact, our previous guest, Brian Lebovic, you may know Brian.
I know Brian very well. Great guy.
Yeah, incredible guy. And we talked about the same thing. In fact, it was one of the pieces. And so I'll reinforce it here. Look, guys out there, guys and gals, firm leaders, owners, if you're not out visiting other firms, you're missing out. I'm gonna open up the invitation for you, Ed, that just go out and visit Ed. Right? Go out and visit Brown Crouppen. Give him a call, because everybody's doing it a little different. But there's so many good things happening in firms across the country. And just as you said, if you take this humble approach of, hey, we may be doing things well, we've got some things going, things are working, but we can always get better, we can grow. If you'll take that approach and then go out and visit other people, you learn so much. And I love this kind of collective wisdom and growth that happens when we're not siloed, when we're sharing knowledge,
one of the
sharing
most reassuring things when you visit other firms and see how they do it is just accepting the fact that no two places do things the exact same way. There's no singular recipe for absolute success. Everybody has the same sort of issues. So what it does is it helps to, first of all, allay whatever anxiety that you may have when you think that other people maybe are doing everything right and you haven't figured it out. Right. You see other places are struggling with the same stuff, but you also can put your anxiety away that there's somehow one magic formula and you're the one that has to figure it out. You don't.
Yeah.
One, there is no magic formula. There is a million paths to success, and all you have to do is find one, and you don't even have to create it on your own. You can visit other places and recreate, follow their paths.
100%. That's so true. And one of the things that I've noticed, I believe right now there are two folks that are working for you that used to work for me. I've known several people. I still have several friends that I've met through the years at conferences and when you guys came down to visit us in Texas. And honestly, everybody that I've talked to that works for you guys, and especially the two ladies that are working for you now that used to work for me, they love it there. They love working for you. And I know you're a humble guy and all that, but I want to hear, why is it, do you believe, that people love working at Brown Crouppen?
I think that it's a culture thing. I think it begins at the top. I think our original founders, Ron Brown and Terry Crouppen, I think they were people who got into this business for the right reasons. I think they were naturally people who went into law and saw that there was an opportunity to help average citizens out there. And I think that because of that, because I think they got into it for the right reasons at the beginning, they were always open to ideas. They didn't care where a good idea came from. All that it mattered was that it was a good idea. And that began a culture that now, Andy Crouppen and I are both managing partners, and we've built on that. We've kind of stood on that and expanded it, even further. We recognized right from the beginning that a business has to be scalable. And in order to grow, it requires trust and delegation and emphasizing putting together a great team of people. Now, we've done that, but then you have to take your time with those people to really instill in them the values of the operation. And I'm not a big believer in a lot of rules. What I'm a big believer in is understand philosophically who we are, what we stand for, and what we're trying to accomplish. And if you know that, if that's sort of in your bones, and you can call that a mission statement or whatever you want to call that, but if you live in it and it's in your bones, you empower your people to exercise judgment. They don't have to come to you for everything. You are not scalable, no matter how hard you work, no matter how smart you think you are, there's still just the one of you. So that is going to require you to step back, lose whatever ego or arrogance that you may have to think that you're the only one that can get stuff done. And you got to empower your people and just arm them with that culture. And then it's up to them. And if you cast, years ago, Woody Allen was asked, why he was so successful as a director, and all of his performers would always get nominated for Oscars. And he said, honestly, it's the casting. 90% of it's the casting. And
that's
so
right.
For us, it really is all about bringing in the right people. We made a decision, Bill, and I know I don't want to take us off on too many tangents, but we made an active decision at some point, 10 years ago maybe, that we were going to hire nice people. We believed that people were either people persons who were nice and genuinely cared for their fellow man and woman, and that you couldn't teach that. But a lot of the other stuff we do, you can teach. So we started to reprioritize what we valued in the interviewing process. And, you'd be amazed what happened. Now, here we are a decade later, and we work at a firm filled with over 250, I believe, genuinely good human beings, nice people who are here for the right reasons. And then the rest of it becomes much easier, as you know.
That's right.
Easier to instill a good culture when you start with great casting.
Man, Ed, I love everything that you just said. I said this in the last episode with Brian, but it's true again here. And I want everybody to know we don't like that answer was not pre-planned. You and I were not like, this is exactly how it's going to go. I love when guests share these truths that other guests have shared as well, that I, share a lot. And like this stuff is such gold. What you just said, Ed, the last 4 minutes of this show, right? One of the things was, that there's limitations that a leader can have. You can only go so far. You can only do so much, which places so much emphasis and necessity on having the right people in your firm. And that's what culture ends up being about, right? I always say culture is everything. But culture ends up being about people, right? It's the manifestation of values and beliefs and all these things through people. And the leader sets the tone for that, but the leader can't do everything. And usually when they try, they end up messing things up, right?
Right. I think a leader goes through stages where they start off and they're learning and they're making mistakes. And then they get to a peak where they kind of have figured things out. They've got a pretty good system. But if they don't evolve, and delegate and empower, they actually wind up becoming their organization's biggest impediment.
Absolutely.
Because when you're looking for pinch points, delays, bureaucracies in the system, if you've created a bottleneck at the leadership spot, you have slowed down growth, you have slowed down innovation. And when you do that, you take the wind out of the sails of your most motivated people. So, I have certain philosophies that I follow, and I know Andy, my partner, is sort of the same way, which is when you do have people that are fueled with their own passion, give them some space to run with it, give them some space to fail with it, to succeed with it, but to try. But when you have people who are clearly, truly passionate and they want to be great at what they do, for the love of God, just support them, encourage them, give them the tools, and then sit back and let them actually do it. Don't stand over their shoulder. Don't act like you know better. Let the passion fuel the project. Most things are, I always say the things we do, if they're a huge success, that's fantastic. If they're a huge failure, that's also kind of fantastic because we know exactly what not to do. The challenge is always for the stuff in the middle, Is it a clear success or a clear failure? Monitoring those things, watching them, and try to steer those things in the right direction.
So good, so good. And I hope our listeners, especially young firm owners or owners and leaders of firms that are just starting out, I hope you rewind that and listen to what Ed just said over and over and over again. And you've heard it in multiple of our episodes that the wisest, in my opinion, the wisest and most successful leaders in our industry all share this same belief, that they understand how important it is to gather people around them, good people, people they can trust, talented people, all that, and then begin to let those people run. Get those people your values, saturate them with your values, with the mission, give them the tools, equip them, and then let them run. And I'll just quote off. I know I've heard Chad Dudley give a talk called "Let Go to Grow." Right, I love it. That's exactly right. I just wrote an article, a two-part article for Ken Hardison and Pilma, and I've been researching this idea of control in a leader versus scalability. And you kind of touched on it there. If you're high control, you're not going to be able to scale because you can't control everything. You can't control every detail. It's okay to be a high control person. Most high performers are, but you've got to learn where to place that control. So the control really becomes more about empowerment. So you want things done the right way in your firm, will empower your core group of leaders and then give them the space to empower those below them, and on down and on down. Everybody that I know that's super successful in this industry has figured this out to some degree. They're empowering those around them. And then last thing that I want to just recap what you said or go back to, I say this all the time. To get culture and leadership right and to get your team right, it starts with hiring. It starts with your hiring process and hiring for the right qualities. Because if you can get the right team together that will respond to your leadership style and respond to those values that you have and embrace them, then you can create what business books call a high autonomy, high expectation workplace. You're not micromanaging. You're giving a lot of autonomy to a lot of smart and driven people, but you're holding them accountable. You have high expectations of them. But most great people want that. They embrace.
Yeah, they do. Exactly. I mean, most people who are highly motivated, they're just like in sports. It's the ones that say, just get me the ball. I promise.
Give me the ball.
Yeah. I will get it in there, or I'll do the best I can. But they want the ball, and and of course, if you're training well, mentoring well, hiring well, making sure the qualifications are there, there's really very low risk in giving somebody the ball.
That's right.
It should work out okay. It may not work out exactly as you would have done it yourself, but it's okay for other people to have their own style, their own way of executing. Another lesson that I've learned in this in sort of our leadership plan is I love fresh ideas. I love that, but what I really love is execution. Not to say that ideas aren't important, but truthfully, ideas are a dime a dozen. And it takes a long time to even evaluate if an idea was a good one or not. And what's going to ultimately decide if it was a good one or not is all going to be in the execution anyway. So I like to fill my team. I don't need a team of leaders where every one of them sits there brainstorming, new things we could be doing. What I like is a team that understands that there's a lot of ways to get things done, and I know how to get the ball from this location into the end zone on every project consistently. Like, I'll take an executor, someone who can execute every time, over somebody who just has good ideas. A lot of executors happen to have good ideas also. They've learned a lot in their practical boots on the ground experience. The other thing I wanted to touch on too is something we've evolved to amongst leadership. How do you create a culture where you don't have leadership in conflict? Because they each have an area that they kind of claim as their own, but there are no tight swim lanes in a business. People have to appreciate that what goes on in one department always touches what goes on in the other department. So instead of focusing so hard on the individual silos and the swim lanes and thinking that we were going to resolve conflict amongst leadership by keeping people a little bit more siloed, we realized we had to go the exact opposite route. We had to acknowledge the fact that we are all part of one law firm. There are no real swim lanes. The things we do have an effect on what happens with everybody else. And what we really just needed to do was build more trust in each other. And we needed a definition of what we meant by trust. And our definition of what we mean by trust is your sincere and honest belief that if somebody else in leadership has taken an action, that they did so because they believed it was in the best interest of the firm. That's it. Like, when you can come from that position where you look at the decisions made by other people, and if your default is the honest belief that even if you may disagree with their decision, but if your honest belief is that the reason they did that was because it was they believed it was in the best interest of the organization. And if you can believe that starts you off in a position of not just giving the benefit of the doubt to people, which I think is the minimum you should give people. I think you should be generous in your assumptions about people. I think that, people are who they are. And if you know these people to be good people, caring people, hardworking people, then you should never assume the worst of them when a situation comes up that you disagree with. You should always bend over backwards to be generous in all of your assumptions about what the other members have done on the team. Because if you do that consistently, then you get a team that is working together like their rowing crew. And they recognize that that's what's going to make the organization work the best.
Love that, Ed. And something else that you said in there, I love that definition of trust, and I love how you're applying it. And that's the standard that you're asking everyone in a baseline of how the leadership is treating one another. But that also, something else I caught in there is that also what you're asking everyone to always be thinking about is the preeminent value is do what's best for the firm, do what's best for the whole, for this team, which ultimately means for the clients, right? And
exactly.
Ultimately means,
I was just going to say that becomes really, it's almost like when the days that I go to court and prepare for trial, I always started by outlining my closing argument. That was my starting point, because in my mind, I felt like ultimately, this is what I want to be able to tell the jury, because this is my winning argument. This is what's going to get me my intended result. That's where I need to wind up. Just like if you were plotting out any other journey, you would enter in, like Google Maps, your destination. You don't, so you start there. This is where I want to go. And then the way I would prepare my case is I would say, okay, in order for me to say that in my close, here is the list of pieces of information that must be introduced into evidence so that I can say what I want to say. And then I would sit there and say, okay, what is the best source of that piece of information? Is it a physical piece of evidence? Is it a photograph? Is it a particular witness? That would dictate who I was going to call, how I was going to keep the trial efficient and not be wasteful with the jury's time. And then the very last thing I would do is my opening statement, because that should just be my closing statement, but without any of the argumentation. And that's it. And it's really not all that different. The goal of this game is to provide the best experience you can for your clients. That means that not only do they get a great result, not only do they get it in a reasonable amount of time, but that at every step of the way, every interaction that they had with your firm, no matter who it was, if it was the first person that answered their call the first time they called, or the lawyer that did the heavy lifting, or anybody in the process, uniformly, they have to come away saying that they turned something that I thought was going to be an unpleasant experience in my life into
Yeah.
something where I don't know that I've ever felt more cared for. And the only way you can get your employees to treat the clients that way is for leadership to treat the
To treat
employees
the
that
team
way.
that way.
And
That's
the only
right.
way you can get leadership to be that way is for ownership to treat leadership that way. It's
Love it.
really not that complicated when you just look at it in its most basic terms.
Totally agree. And I believe probably that when you are in the context of those leadership moments where there has been a question where somebody did something and it's not the way you would have done it, and maybe you disagree with it, or maybe there's some type of conflict, which conflict isn't bad. Healthy conflict is the way that we solve the toughest problems and we get the best ideas out there. But if, coming back to that idea, that if everybody has it in their heart and in their mind, we are doing what's best for this firm, then when you have a disagreement or two people went in a different direction, it causes you to clarify that question. What is best for the firm? And so when so-and-so on the leadership team thought this way and so-and-so thought this way, it causes us to come back to the question. Both of them believe they were doing what was in the best interest of the firm. You trust that, but we went in different directions. So now we clarify, all right, what is in the best interest of it? Which brings us back to values, which brings us back to our mission and all that. So you're constantly, even when you have conflict or difference, you're constantly refining and clarifying and sharpening your sense of purpose in the firm.
Right. And you're turning the conversation into a collaboration and
That's
not an
right.
argument.
Yeah.
You know,
Love it.
And we have no problem with people being passionate in their belief. I like when people are passionate. They tend to be more persuasive.
Yeah.
And you know, Andy and I, as partners, you know, we agree with each other on just about everything, which is amazing. Certainly
Yeah.
culturally, as things come up, where our instincts are overlap tremendously. In the Venn diagram, I would almost call it an 80% overlap. And then you have the outlying areas. And the way that we've always dealt with that conflict between us is always passion based. If one of us simply feels stronger in their position than the other person feels in theirs, that's our default. We're going to try it that way. And then, of course, you know, as you know, Bill, very few mistakes are not easily reversible. When you try stuff, it doesn't work. You have to be nimble. You have to be willing to pivot, especially in a law firm situation where we are constantly being given new challenges.
That's right. Yeah.
Tort reform on the horizon. There's constantly competition coming into your market. I mean, if you're not prepared for the onslaught of changes, you know, there was a time where we were all advertising in the yellow pages.
That's right.
And now,
wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Things turn. The debate about how, you know, where TV is right now compared to where it was 10 years ago, where it will be 10 years from now. The nature of everything in the business has to be nimble.
Absolutely. You know, that's something I don't think enough people are talking about. It's gonna get you whether you're ready or not. Agility and the ability to manage and harness change, not just change management, but change optimization. How do we get better as change happens? Those factors are critical to the success of a growing firm beyond a shadow of a doubt, because you're exactly right. We have many factors in this industry that are constantly in flux. And those that are better and are, I love your word nimble. Some people might say agile. The better that you can run and not hit obstacles that cause you to stop, but maybe just divert direction. We used to have a saying that said, look, we want you to be on this path of constantly growing. And there's going to be moments where you take a dip, but just don't stop. Don't let mistakes and failures cause you to stop. Keep moving, keep going forward. Even if you have to take a little, it won't be have to, you will have to take detours along the way and find different ways and change and grow. But if you don't, you get stuck, you get paralyzed, and either the market, your competition, the law, whatever passes you by. Yep. Such good stuff, Ed. Look, one of the things I wanted to touch on the podcast today was you have built this brand personally, and that's a compliment. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It's been amazingly helpful for your firm. You've got the lawyers eating sandwiches. You got the Godfather of Law. How did this happen? How did you've won some Midwest Emmys, I think, and all these things? Like, how
Yeah,
did this brand develop, and how has it helped the firm?
well, we always it started on the belief, and it's not a belief, it's a fact that the overwhelming majority, 99.9% of the people who are out there today, the ones watching TV and looking at billboards and going on social media, they don't need a lawyer today. They don't need your services today.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your overall marketing, we felt like, well, look, we have commercials, traditional lawyer commercials on television, and those are designed to speak to the people that do need us today, direct response. But we thought, what do the other people really want? Like, there's no point in giving them a hard sell about hiring a lawyer when they simply don't need one. What would be a better use of that time, of that money, of that energy? And so we realized that we had to come up with something that appealed to those people. And so then when we looked on social media, we said, well, geez, social media is a very on-demand environment. You can skip things, you can swipe past things, you can scroll past things. So we said, if we're going to go on to this, we need to create something on the people's terms. We gotta ask, what do they want to see, not what we want to show them. And what we noticed was that there were a lot of movements. There were movements, a lot of food on the internet. People like to see what people are eating. People like to talk about food. They like to make recommendations about food and have opinions about food because they're not controversial and people like to eat. It's universally, generally a thing that people like to eat. So we noticed that on the internet, people tend to enjoy things that make them laugh, things that teach them about something that they never even knew they wanted to know about. So sort of based on those principles of what people wanted to do, we created programming. We call it BCTV. You can go to bctv.com to get a sample of this. And we tried out 4 different shows at first. And then we gauged reaction, engagement from viewers. What were they saying about it? How were they reacting? And were they sharing? And based on the feedback we got from those early episodes, we wound up kind of narrowing it down to the 2 basic shows you talked about. 3 Lawyers Eating Sandwiches and Ed Versus, which is the show I do. In Ed Versus, I'm very careful about how I've constructed my brand because I know that only one thing really works, whether you're talking to the public at large on television or if you're talking to a jury of 12 people. You have to be your genuine self.
Yeah.
That's it. If you cannot be genuine, you cannot do that job. If you can't be genuine, you will never truly bend the will of other people because people don't want to have their hand forced. People have a great BS detector. And we have focus group these things. And the second people feel like they're being sold or they're being deceived, they can't trust what they're seeing, they are very happy to dismiss everything they're seeing. So you have to do what's genuine to you. And for us, it may be different for another firm, but our genuine selves were able to come out in an environment where we were eating lunch together and just talking to each other the way we normally would and loving on the food. And people really responded to it. And then my videos, some of them are very food centric, but some of them are very much, looking at the etiquette of things that we've never really considered the etiquette of, like riding in an elevator, like traveling on an airplane, places where we come in close contact with strangers. There's a lot of areas like that. And so a lot of the video, and they just took off. People just responded to it, both from a popular standpoint in that there was almost no negative feedback. We've had on YouTube alone 1.8 million hours of our content consumed by our public.
That's fantastic.
And that doesn't count how many people watch stuff on Facebook, which will probably have a comparable number. So where I think it's really helped us, Bill, is a lot of people don't think that there's a middle of the funnel when it comes to choosing a lawyer. They think it goes right from brand name recognition right to the bottom of direct response calling. But because most people don't need you today, we just believe that in the middle, people were making qualitative decisions about who is out there and decisions about whether they liked you, decisions about whether they thought they could relate to you, decisions about whether they can trust you. And I believe that our videos and putting ourselves right out there as our true selves to the public has answered those three middle questions in a very positive manner. People out there don't just know our firm's name. They have an opinion of us. And I think because of these, most of those opinions, very, very positive.
Yeah, and they feel like they know you. Like
and you know, the truth of it is, and they do know me.
Yeah, because you've been your authentic self. You've shown them your authentic self.
If they sat and had lunch with me on a random day with no cameras, they would get the exact same person that they see in the Three Lawyers Eating Sandwiches.
All right, so I know the question that would be out there for a lot of firm owners, a lot of leaders, a lot of marketers, right? You are doing shows about eating food, about elevator, not stinking up the elevator. You're doing shows that are not related to car wrecks, not related to PI law. And so for those that out there that are saying, but wait, I mean, how does that work? Because some take this model or this approach of, well, be the expert, be the educator in your field, write a book about, PI law, about how to handle a wreck, all these things. And look, I'm not saying any of those ideas are good or bad. I'm just saying there would be people that are asking the question, how does that translate?
How do you close the loop?
Yeah, how do you close the loop? And I would add one piece to that, even one step further. Do you think that makes you less competitive for the really big cases? When people,
I would
go run with that.
Yeah, I would suggest that the conclusion clearly is the opposite of that. I feel like the way the internet works is, you got to attract their attention, but once you do, because you can put cookies on and you can retarget in your marketing, you have to think of these videos as flypaper. This gets their attention and it sticks them to you for a while, because their decision to follow you on social media, they're more likely to follow you when you've done something that has educated them, made them laugh, made them interested in your future content. Once they engage with you, once they've seen any of the videos on YouTube or on Facebook, we kind of have them stuck for a while, and now we can retarget them with whatever we want to. So now that we have captive eyeballs, we can put in legal messaging, the medicine that comes along with it. And so it's a great little system for that. We're creating our own captive audiences. Just take my own personal fan page, which is Ed Herman, the Godfather of Law, on Facebook.
Yeah.
And, I've cultivated, and I mean, every one of my fans, and it's inching toward 19,000, every one of those was obtained like honestly, sincerely, no contests, no bots, just building a relationship little by little to where the people that know me, they'll see the videos, and the videos may make you laugh. But in those videos, what you're seeing is compelling thought, compelling arguments, down-to-earth humor, all of the things that people are actually really looking for in their lawyers. And the way I know it works, and the way I know that I've created comfort between the public and myself, is that all day long I get direct messages from people on that page with legal questions. They're not all about car wrecks. But they know I'm a lawyer, and they feel comfortable enough that they can reach out to me. And I had a guy call me on a Sunday night, reached out, didn't call me. He sent me a direct message. Sunday night, 11:30 at night, he'd been pulled over by the police. His first thought was to send me a message. Now, that's not even the area of law that I do, but that's how top of mind I was for a person in their most serious moment of need. This person knew they had been drinking. This was not I'm pulled over for speeding. This was a crisis situation. And what blew the person away even more was that I responded to their message personally within 5 minutes.
That's amazing.
And even though I don't handle that kind of law, I have a good friend that does, who makes their cell phone available. And I had that guy on the phone with that person before the police even came up and asked for their license. So
that's fantastic.
That person will be a client and an
For
ambassador
life.
for life.
That's right. And look, every bit of this is absolutely awesome. But a point there, right? I fully believe, without question, that this industry is moving, that we have to understand that the general public does not think about criminal lawyers and DWI lawyers and plaintiffs lawyers and personal injury lawyers and all that. They have some maybe vague idea of that. But if you want to be highly successful, if you want to win in a big way in our industry, you need people. What I want for the firms that I work with, I want them to be seen as the legal resource for the community. I want people to call us for the DWI. I want them to call us when they've got a will and estate question. I want them to call us. Now, of course, you got to develop your referral network, and but I think the future, if you want to be the best, you have to be the legal solution, the go-to for the consumer, because there's so many other areas of their life where that's how it works. If you want to buy something, you go to Amazon. That becomes the go-to. If you want to find out information, Google is the go-to. I want to be the go-to when someone says, I've got a legal issue. I'm going to call Brown and Crouppen. It doesn't matter what the legal issue is. And then it's our responsibility to figure out how to do that well and to be their solution throughout whatever situation they have.
That's right. And just, as an example, we obviously have a very elaborate referral network. We some that we are able to co-counsel on and make fees on, but a lot of them are things that we don't make any money on, but we know that we are helping. The person called us for help.
That's right.
That's my main thing I talk to our intake center about. Not only did they call us for help, but number one, never lose sight of the fact that we begged them to call us for help. We paid millions
to get that call
every year for 40 years in the hopes that in that moment where this person had a question, that they would think to call us. And now all of a sudden that moment has arrived. The call happened. Think about everything that went into that. And the moment you answer that phone, it's the culmination of so many dollars, so much hard work, and our best prayer answered. Because that's all you do as a marketer, is hope that in that moment of need, you get the call.
That's right.
Every time our phone rings, it's that call. So that's the mentality that we go through with our intake people, and the idea that we want to help everyone. So if it's not going to be us representing them, it's going to be us connecting them with someone who's going to represent them. If they don't have a claim at all, then the way we help them is we educate them. We explain why the system is set up in a way that doesn't allow for them to have a recovery, so that maybe the help we give them is a sense of closure or a sense that they've done their due diligence. Whatever it is, but we're helping at every stage that we can. And then we always leave the offer open to continue to help. I did a podcast last week and they pulled this quote out and have been showing it around social media, that we give unlimited free consultations. I tell every person that comes in, I don't want you to ever think that just because you called and I spoke to you for a while and I answered your questions, that somehow I don't want you to call me right back in an hour if something were to happen. This is an unlimited free consultation. We want all your calls, not just some of them. And we never want you to feel bad about calling. It's what we're asking you to do. It is a mentality and it is an energy that you can pass forward to every caller, whether you're going to take their case or not. But if you can pass that energy on to them, you increase the likelihood that you're going to get the next call from them. Because maybe the next call from them is the one that you're going to be able to represent.
Love it. It's so true. Look, leaders out there, firm owners, people of America, listen to this, man. You want to know how to run your firm well. You want to know how to be successful. Listen to what Ed Herman has to say and listen to it 3 more times after you listen to it the first time. Ed, I want to close up on this question. Words of wisdom that you might have. You've been doing this a while. You're damn good at it. People love to work for you. You guys are prosperous, but you've surely, as we all have, you've had your share of mistakes. You've seen a lot. You've been your own worst enemy, I'm sure, at times. As you said, but you've been the bottleneck. You know what it's like to be in the ups and downs of this industry. Words of wisdom for young firm leaders or leaders of young firms, or for those that are stuck. Maybe they've been around for 20 years, but they're stuck. They've plateaued. they're declining. What are some of the most important things you would say to leaders of firms across the country?
The most important thing I would say, and this may strike you odd, the thing to focus on is building a business that you love to work in, a place you love to go, a place that fills you with energy, doesn't deplete it. And you figure out what that environment is for you. Build your business around that. Because if you keep your energy up and you're always enthused about being there and working on it, that is going to then become the thing that trickles down. And so I know what inspired it for me. The place that I worked 22 years ago before this opportunity, I used to get a terrible feeling in my stomach every Sunday night. And I realized it was because I knew I had to go back in the next day. And it was a sickening feeling. And I made a pledge that if I was ever in a position to ensure that I never had that feeling again, and that nobody who ever worked with me ever had that feeling again, that I would do it. And as soon as we had the opportunity to start instilling a lot of that in Brown Crouppen, which already had so much of that philosophy in place, it changed everything. Because really, at the end of the day, you're running a business because you want it to be personally fulfilling for you. It's your purpose, it's your happiness, it's your passion. And if you're not enjoying it, then why are you doing it?
Absolutely. That is wisdom. That's great wisdom. Ed Herman, thanks so much for joining me. Godfather of Law, best wishes to you. Excited to see where the firm continues to grow. Can't wait to see you wherever in America that might be next. And I do want to remind everyone, as we said on the last podcast, November 17th and 18th at the Waldorf Astoria in Las Vegas, Vista Consulting Team and myself will be hosting the second annual Law Firm Leadership Conference, Law Firm Leadership Summit. This summit is 2 days of power-packed information to grow leaders, from managing partners, owners, mid-level leaders, executives. We are going to focus on giving your leaders everything we've got to try and put them into hyper-speed growth so that they can serve more people, serve more clients, make your firm better. We encourage you to be there. Promo is going to start coming out. You'll be able to see it. November 17th, 18th, Waldorf in Las Vegas, Law Firm Leadership Summit. Right now, our keynote is Liz Wiseman, author of the book Multipliers. We're going to have some of the best leaders and law firms across the country there. Can't wait to see everyone there. All right, folks, never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Culture of Law on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or litify.com/culture of law. Thanks, Ed. See you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.